So this week's Parsha is Vaetchanan, which literally means, and I prayed and pleaded to God. Now, if you remember a few weeks ago, Moshe hit the rock and was told that he will not enter the land of Israel. He will have to stay in the desert. Pass away in the desert, he won't go in with the Jewish people. So Moshe, I'll just catch you up if you missed last week, Moshe was giving a roundup and a summary of the whole Torah till now. Moshe is about to pass away. 37 days before his passing, Moshe gives a long speech. Every day he gets up, all the Jewish people gather, and he speaks, and he gives a whole, the historical background of what's happened till now, as well as reviewing all the mitzvahs as his last speech. So even though in the other 4 books of the Torah, it was in Moshe says God spoke to Moshe saying, in this book it's all in first person. Moshe saying, and I did X, and I went and I gathered the people, and you came to me, and I had a conversation with you, and it's Moshe's person. So we're continuing on from last week, that Moshe tells the Jewish people, I begged God to allow me to enter the land of Israel. And the word Vaetchanan is not just a regular word of prayer or asking. It's more of an entreating, begging, pleading. And we'll speak about it later, what exactly that means. But it says that Moshe requested from God 515 times to allow him into the land of Israel. Please, 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 please. 515, no, it was more than that, but it was a whole prayer. 515 different prayers to allow him into the land. And if you look at verse 26 on page 1077, but God became angry with me because, and he did not hear me. God said to me, that's enough, suffices. It's been enough that you've been, speak to me no more regarding this matter. Don't ask me any more times to go into the land of Israel. It's been 515 times, that's enough. And the idea is that Hashem says to Moshe, that God says to Moshe, that if you keep asking and I keep saying no, people are going to say, look, God, look how much he pushed, and God is being so, refusing. So stop asking. And that's the common understanding, is that Moshe stopped asking to go into the land of Israel after God told him no. After 515 prayers, Moshe said, okay, that's it. But the Rabbi actually says in 1991 that it's a really big doubt. It's very doubtful to say that Moshe stopped praying to go into the land of Israel. Why did Moshe want to go into the land of Israel? Why was he so desperate? You think he wanted to taste the fruit? He wanted to see the sights. He wanted to see what did Moshe want? Moshe wanted to go to Hebron to visit the forefathers. Moshe wanted to do the mitzvahs that are all connected to the land, like we spoke about a few weeks ago. The different mitzvahs that you could only do in the land of Israel. The mitzvahs of tithing and the mitzvahs of giving challah, all the things which are connected to the land. That's what Moshe wanted to do. So why was Moshe so desperate to go into the land to do mitzvahs? So it's very doubtful that Moshe would stop asking to go in just because God said to stop. And it's likely that Moshe kept asking, but Moshe eventually agreed to stay in the desert because he didn't want to leave his generation behind. Remember, the whole generation died out in the desert, and they were all staying there till they're all buried in the desert. We don't have them anymore, and they're lost. The idea is that Moshe stayed in the desert with them, that when in the future times, when the resurrection of the dead, when Mashiach comes, Moshe will lead his generation out with him. So it shows you Moshe's dedication and self-sacrifice for his people. It says that if a student gets exiled, they exile the rabbi with him to teach him. That's one of the ideas in the Talmud. So certainly, if a whole generation are stuck in exile, stuck in the desert, certainly Moshe, their rabbi, their teacher, stays in the desert with them till they eventually will enter the land. Similar to having cities of refuge and having a place where they're able to learn and study and to recover from anything negative. As we'll see later in the Parsha about the cities of refuge come up again. So Moshe asked to go into the land, and Hashem says no. But what he will do is he will allow Moshe to see the land. So if you look at verse 27, ascend to the peak of Mount Nevoy and lift up your eyes westward, northward, southward, and eastward, and see it with your eyes, but you're not going to cross. So Moshe was allowed to went to a high peak on the east side of the Jordan, which is modern day Jordan, and looked around the land, saw the land. It means also, they said, the Rashi explains, it wasn't only the physical side of the land, he also saw the land in a spiritual sense. He saw the eventual Bet HaMikdash, the eventual temple that we built in the land. He saw everything that was going to happen to the Jewish people, but he was not going in. He's going to be buried on the east side of the Jordan, as we will find out at the end of this book, the last class, when Moshe passes away. And then Hashem tells Moshe, command Joshua, because he's going to be the one who take the Jews across to the other side. But Joshua is Moshe's star pupil, his most important disciple. And it says, strengthen him, encourage him, so he shouldn't be afraid, and he's going to cross the people over. Now, if you look on page 1079, the rest of the parsha, for the most part, will be the core of Judaism. We're going to have the Shema coming up. We're going to have the repetition of the Ten Commandments. And we're going to have a lot of other important ideas, concepts, Jewish theology in this week's parsha. So it's a very packed, it's not that long, but it's a very packed and core parsha. And if you look at verse 2, there's a very important commandment. Do not add to anything that I command you, nor subtract from it, in order to observe the commandments of God your God, that I command you exactly as they should be observed. It's a very important mitzvah. God told us to take 4 species on Sukkot. Etrog, Lulav, the citron, the palm branch, the myrtle branch, 4 species. You can't say, I want to take another species to add to it because it'll look nice in the bouquet. I'm gonna add roses. It doesn't work that way. Don't add to God's mitzvahs. The same way, don't subtract. There's a very important lesson that sometimes when you add, you end up coming to subtracting. Who remembers in the first parsha of the Torah, which we didn't study together, but the first parsha of the Torah was Bereshis, which is the story of Adam and Eve in the garden. Adam was told by God, do not eat from the tree. Adam transmitted that message to Chava, to his wife Eve, do not eat from the tree and do not touch it. That's what he told her. As a safeguard, as you know. The snake convinced Chava, the snake convinced Eve to eat from the tree. What she first did was he pushed Chava into the tree, that she touched it. He says, you see, you touched it, you didn't die. Nothing will happen to you. The same thing is if you eat from it, it's not a problem. And that's what causes the sin. So we see sometimes that if you don't clearly delineate, if you add, it'll end up coming to subtracting, end up coming to not doing anything. Now, you're going to ask the obvious question. The rabbi, we know there's rabbinic mitzvahs, and we know the rabbis make safeguards. There's mitzvahs that we do things. On Shabbos, is there an issue to hold a pen?
Yes.
There's no issue to hold a pen. There's no issue to move a pen either. The issue is you're going to write. So rabbinically, they enacted, do not handle a pen, do not handle money on Shabbos, in order that you shouldn't come to do business and write. Or the pen in order to write. So how are they allowed to do that? Because we're going to learn in a later parsha that the rabbis are actually commanded to make these safeguards. But you have to clearly know what's biblically mandated, what does God say to do, and what's a rabbinic protection. So as long as you are clear on the differences and you're clear on the boundaries, what's what and what's which level, then you can add those safeguards. Then you're meant to add those safeguards to be careful. If it's just a mishmash, you think, oh, God said to do all this, and this is, and you start adding mitzvahs, say, oh, it's a mitzvah to have 4 parchments in the tefillin. It's also a mitzvah to add a 5th one, or whatever it is. You're adding mitzvahs, that's a problem. But to add a safeguard, and to clearly know that this is rabbinic, this is a custom, this is a good thing to do, there's a different levels, right? Something which is a rabbinic mitzvah, something which is a custom, something which is just a nice thing to do, that's okay. And if anything, that's encouraged. Yeah?
So no? the Torah's law.
We'll speak about it in 2 weeks from now, when that's the main parsha of putting safeguards. Eugene doesn't agree. Okay. Okay.
It's sometimes very complicated to explain to children all the things.
For a child, there's obviously something you have to see the child based on how to explain them each thing, but I think children can know the difference between something which is a no-go, and then there's things which are protective.
I'll wait till we have a teenager.
Okay.
Do you know the difference between holding a pen and writing with it?
First, holding the pen is not a problem. Moving the pen, and writing with it, yeah, sure. Writing with the pen is biblically mandated against on
So
Shabbos.
would you hold the pen on Shabbat?
With your pinky.
No.
Yeah.
There you go.
But
you know the difference.
But
You're intelligent. now.
if there's a pen on the table here, and I need this spot on the table, I would go like this.
Because you don't trust yourself.
Don't trust yourself not to write.
Yeah, because the rabbis. We'll have this discussion at a different time, especially let's say the laws of Nida, where the safeguards all have very, very, very well psychological and emotional sense, etc. But that's a discussion for its own right. Then, if you look at verse 6, it says that the Torah is our wisdom and our understanding in the eyes of the peoples. What makes a Jew? What's the Jewish people's claim to fame, so to speak? What's their show and tell to other people in the world? Is the Torah. There's a statement in the Talmud that says, if someone tells you there is wisdom amongst other nations, believe him. If they tell you there's Torah amongst other nations, don't believe him. We 100% know that there's other wisdoms that we could learn from other people and other sciences, many other realms of wisdom. That's for sure. But what's the Jewish people's, what delineates them, what shows the Jewish people for who they are, what's our pride is the Torah. That's what makes us different, and that's our special role. And then there's one of the things which the Jewish people have to remember every day, comes up in the verse 9 onwards, is we have to remember the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah on Sinai was a one-time event that should never be repeated, even in the Mashiach's times. The giving of Torah is a seminal event, a seminal occurrence, that this is when God revealed himself to the whole nation face to face. And he gave them the Torah. And anything which develops from the Torah, anything which is built upon the Torah, was all based and all rooted in that experience. Our whole nation, our whole religion, everything we know about us comes from the giving of the Torah, and therefore there's a mitzvah to remember that every day. So there's 6 things that we're enjoying to remember every day. One of them being the Shabbos to remember every day, as we'll speak about. Other mitzvahs to remember every day, but the first and foremost is to remember the giving of the Torah. Then the Parsha continues about entering the promised land on page 1081. And we're said that in Israel currently, or Canaan currently, there are the other nations and they worship different things. They worship images, they worship animals, all different things they worship. And God tells us to make sure not to make any images. We saw no likeness when we had the relation of Sinai. There was no likeness of physical beings, and therefore we should not worship images. And therefore, it's actually forbidden in a shul, let's say, to have a picture. We don't have picture. We're warned not to have any graven images, not to make images of. Many Jews didn't like pictures, didn't like photographs. Over the years, it's become, I guess, fully accepted by almost everyone. Even very few sects are still against photographs, but for many Jews were against photographs because it's a graven image. I don't know if today's photos are the same thing, but once upon a time, the photo had some, it was dense. A photo was a graven image, so therefore, many Jews were against it.
It was a layer of sort of
glass. Yeah.
And it was a tactile.
Yeah, that's where that idea came from. Yeah. But over time, I guess it's become less. Almost everyone goes with pictures today, so I don't think that still applies. But the general idea that the Jews are afraid of graven images is afraid or hesitant to go towards graven images. That comes from this parsha. And the parsha continues about the giving of the Torah and how it's speaking about the greatness that God took us out of Egypt and with the outstretched arm and gave us the Torah. And there's a verse here that maybe people will recognize from Simchat Torah, But the verse is verse 35 on page 1083. In the Hebrew it goes, Ata hareisa ladas ki Hashem hu ha'elakim ein od milvado. You have been shown that in order that you should know that God is the only God, there's nothing besides for Him. Now, literally, it's understood to mean that there's no other gods besides for God. But on a deeper plane, and the Chassidic teachings emphasize, there is no other reality besides for God. Anything which does exist is because in God's realm pervades, God allows that to be. Nothing has its own real existence for in and of itself, which really exists. All their existence is dependent on God. Yeah? It's not like we think there's a God who's hiding in the, there's another God underneath the earth, waters beneath the earth, there's some sort of creature that's a God. We don't have those worries. We have to know that although we see ourselves and we see the world around us as independent realities, independent existence, you have to know that really what's allowing them to exist, that bringing them into being, is God. When we speak about the unity of God, it doesn't mean that the unity of God, that God's one and not three, God forbid. Right? That's not what we mean, the unity of God. That's a very basic level. The unity of God is that there is nothing which stirs or differs from that unity. Everything in the world stems from that unity, is unified in God's existence. And it's brought out very clearly in verse 39. You must know today and consider in your heart that God is the only God, both in heaven above and the earth below. There is no other. There's no other existence other than God. And therefore, we're enjoined to do the mitzvahs, because if He's the real existence, He's the true reality of everything, therefore we have to fulfill what He says. To verse 25 on page 1081. Interestingly, this week is Tisha B'Av, and the Torah reading of Tisha B'Av comes from this week's Parsha. Usually the Torah reading of a holiday or of a fast day don't necessarily line up with the Torah reading. We usually read about that date, that holiday in the Torah, wherever it's from. If we could be holding Pesach time, we're holding in the book of Leviticus, but we read from the book of Exodus, because it's Pesach. Rosh Hashanah, we're holding already the end of this book, end of Deuteronomy, end of Devarim, but we read back in the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, we read about Avraham and Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak. So we don't necessarily, the reading of the holiday or the fast day line up with the reading of the week. But Tisha B'Av actually comes from this reading, from this week's Parsha, and Tisha B'Av is this week. This year is on Thursday, so it lines up this week. And it's the warnings about what's going to happen if we, God forbid, don't follow what God says. It says, when you have children and grandchildren that are long established in land, you become corrupt and you make idols. I invoke the heaven and earth today as witnesses that you will be speedily and utterly perish from the land, and you're not going to endure in it, and you'll be destroyed. God will scatter you among the peoples. You remain few in number among the nations that God lead you. Verse 30, which is on 1080, just underneath, when you are distressed and all these things happen to you at the end of days, you return to God, your God, and obey Him. So,
mention the temple though in the
temple will be destroyed. It doesn't
explain that.
The temple will be destroyed. No.
Okay.
But you see from there that the Maimonides rules from there that at the end of the exile, all the Jews will do teshuvah and we will be redeemed. It's in the Torah actually shows in the fact that there will be a repentance, return of the Jewish people, and we will return to the land. It's already, it's written into the bylaws of the Torah. Although, unfortunately, everything else which the Torah prophesied has happened, all the negative, or if you read the different curses and different negative prophecies throughout our history have definitely been fulfilled with a heaping measure. But the good, which also means the good ones, the good prophecies will also happen, and already beginning to happen, and please God, will fully happen speedily in our time. Now we're back to page 1085. The cities of refuge. We've spoken about them in the last few weeks because they keep coming up. And it says that Moshe designated 3 cities of refuge. Remember, there's 6 cities of refuge. 3 on the east bank of the Jordan, 3 on the west bank of the Jordan. Moshe can't do the ones on the west bank. Why? Because he hasn't crossed, and he's not going to cross. And later Joshua will set them aside. But right now, Moshe is on the east bank, and we already have control of the east bank of the Jordan. So Moshe sets up the 3 cities of refuge on the east bank of the Jordan. Now, interestingly, halachically, if all 6 cities are not in operation, none of them work. So you can set up 3 cities, but it doesn't help because if someone kills someone accidentally, there's not a refuge. All 6 of them have to be on operation. So why did Moshe go ahead and do 3? Why would Moshe make 3 if he couldn't do all 6? Because when you have a mitzvah that comes to your hand, even if it's not going to be effective, you're not going to get final status, do as much as you could do. Moshe, at this point, is able to set up the cities. He set them up. They don't go into effect till the other 3 get set up by Joshua. But at least do what you could do in order to, when a mitzvah comes to your hand.
Why you need to fill up 6 together?
Because they're one singular mitzvah. When we looked back on 2 weeks ago in Matas Maseh, it's one mitzvah to set up 6 cities of refuge. So it's very nice that Moshe set up 3 of them.
The mitzvah is the purpose of cities of refuge is to protect human life.
True, but
if you prolonging it by 200 years,
200 years, 14 years.
By the time Joshua conquered the...
14 years, another 14 years.
Okay, whatever, 14 years, 14 days.
Yeah.
If in this time frame someone died because they couldn't get to the city, what's the point?
Because the mitzvahs, each mitzvah takes effect at a certain time. But many mitzvahs didn't take effect till we entered the land of Israel. Many mitzvahs don't take effect till there's a temple, right? Until there's a final status temple, till the land is divided. There's many things. The fact is, there's a mitzvah to establish 6 cities of refuge, and all 6 have to be operational in order for it to work. That's the way God set it up.
Of refuge were operational even when temple wasn't built.
Yes. So that's about the cities of refuge. If you look at 1087, 4th reading, we're talking about Moshe is making another covenant with the Jewish people and reminding them of the covenant which happened at Mount Sinai. And then Moshe says, I'm going to remind you of the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments were given at Mount Sinai, and they're listed again here. There are some slight differences. Maybe I'll point some of them out. But the 10 commandments are, I'm the Lord your God. Second one is, don't have any idols. The third one is, don't swear by God's name in vain. The 4th one is, remember Shabbos and keep it holy. That's the way it was the first time it was mentioned. Remember Shabbos. This is says observe Shabbos. There are two equal parts of Shabbos. There's the remembering Shabbos, which we do by making Kiddush, by having a Shabbos meal. We do by honoring it with clean clothing, fresh tablecloths, and the like. Taking a shower before Shabbat. That's remembering Shabbos. And then there's observing, guarding Shabbos, which is all the negative prohibitions on Shabbos of the 39 forbidden acts of labor and the like. The 5th commandment is honor your father and mother. And the 6th commandment is you shouldn't murder. It's not to kill, it's not to murder. There's a difference between killing and murder. There are times when killing is necessary, not only necessary, mandated, but not to murder. The 7th is you should not
Commit adultery.
Commit adultery. The 8th is do not steal, but it means steal people. It means kidnap. It doesn't mean stealing items. The 9th one is not to bear false witness against your fellow man, and the 10th one is Parsha. The mandate of not stealing is not kidnapping, and the way the Talmud learns that out is because it goes do not murder, do not kidnap. So it's specifically talking about stealing, which is akin to murder. Regular stealing is not necessarily like murder.
Stealing. Yeah.
kidnapping
The higher
is
level.
considered
Like,
on par of murder.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
What's the Torah definition of kidnapping?
So it's the whole discussion of the Talmud. You have to come to Gemara. I think my father did it in the Gemara share. There's the whole discussion. What's kidnapping? What do you have to do? How do you take it? Where you running? All the different details of it.
What was the likelihood that someone could inadvertently kidnap someone else?
Inadvertently?
I don't understand if you were kidnapped, but then you'd know you were kidnapped.
There's a law prohibiting kidnapping, and if the Jewish court needs to punish someone who kidnapped, you have to know what constitutes kidnapping. If a father and a mother are arguing over the kids, the father takes the kids, is that considered kidnapping? Right? It's not.
I just didn't think that.
Yeah, saying today, unfortunately, if you ever go to the airport, there's non-stop warnings about like basically kidnapping. Unfortunately, it's a common thing today. Human smuggling and
Human smuggling, it does happen, yes.
it's horrible, but there's a reason why the Torah mandates against it. Right? So those are the 10 Commandments, and they're listed again here in this parsha. And the custom in shul is we actually stand up, just like on Shavuot, or when you read it the first time, we all stand up for the Aliyah. Same thing, if you come to shul on Shabbos, same thing, we stand up out of honor of the 10 Commandments. Interesting, there's a whole argument if you should stand up for the 10 Commandments. Because they say, if you don't stand for the rest of Torah reading, why should you stand up for the 10 Commandments? Are we trying to say the 10 Commandments are more important than the rest of the Torah reading? It's a whole discussion. But at the end of the day, the custom in our shul and many other shuls is to stand for the 10 Commandments, because they do have some sort of special... they were definitely given in a special way in the Sound Light show at Mount Sinai.
Sometimes you see people coming to our shul from other shuls, and they actually stand during the reading.
The whole reading?
Yeah.
Every week, yeah, sure.
Already,
I
yeah.
think it's really nice.
Now, if you look at verse 20, it says, when you heard the voice issuing out of the midst of the darkness while the mountain was burning with fire, you approached me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, behold, God showed us His glory and His greatness, and we heard the voice. We've seen today God can directly speak with human beings, and they can live. But, so now why should we die? For this great fire will consume us if we continue to hear the voice of God, our God, anymore. The Jewish people were absolutely frightened. They heard God, and their souls expired. They heard the first commandment, the God's souls expired. God brought them back to life. They heard the second commandment, their souls expired. They come to Moshe and say, enough. We can't have this godly revelation that's above and beyond, way above anything we can take and we can handle. We're not built for this. Moshe, you go hear from God, you be our intermediary, you hear what God has to say, and then you'll be able to transmit to us God's words in a way that we could take it, we can interface with it, we could bring it into our life. And God said that was the right thing to do. Because, as I've spoken many times already, the Torah is meant to be in our lives, in this world. Judaism's perspective, what's holiness, what's good, what's the right thing to do, is not to go live as a monk on a mountain in a monastery and be cut off from the world. Judaism wants you to integrate godliness, spirituality into our physical life, into the way we live, into the way we think, into the way we operate. So if we're going to be, every time we have godliness and we just lose ourselves, expire completely, that's not the point. The point is that we should be able to take God's messages and live them in a physical human framework. So therefore, that's where this concept of a Moshe, of an intermediary between us and God, comes. Although every Jew is holy and every Jew really deserves to speak to God, but currently in our state, the way we are, we can't handle it. Therefore, we have a Moshe, we have a intermediary, we have a... It's not that Moshe is God, not at all. But Moshe just possesses the ability to speak to God. It says that Moshe, from one half and up, he was godly. So the one half and down, he was human. Not to say that he was a God at all, but to say that he had the ability to integrate, to interface godly revelation. And even Moshe was only to whatever level Moshe could get to. It says, so God's, so to speak, is back. If you want to use anthropomorphism, is God's back. Even Moshe couldn't see God direct. It says Moshe saw God as if he was like the back knot of his tefillin. That's the description he uses. So, as we see, verse 25, it says, they have spoken well. God says the people have spoken well. And then in verse 27 it says, so go say to the Jewish people, return to your tents. If you remember, one of our first weeks he spoke about Moshe not being married. That after Moshe got to the relation, he didn't have marital life afterwards. And we said the rest of the Jewish people were told, go return to your tents, go live your regular life. Moshe, since he was constantly being on this elevated spiritual plane, he couldn't actually. So although I've been saying that the main Jewish life is to be involved in the world, at the end of the day, Moshe had to be at a certain elevated state that didn't allow for regular living life. As you see in verse 28, as for you, Moses, you stay here. You stay with God. And then the parsha continues about one of the fundamental Jewish line, Jewish prayer, which Jews throughout the millennia have lived with, and unfortunately on their lips, is the famous prayer which we say twice a day: Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. He's the only one. Now, if you look on the Hebrew side, 1090 on the Hebrew side, the last line, the word Shema has a big ayin at the end. The word Echad, the end of a line, has a big dalet at the end. And that's the same way they are in the actual Torah. There's a bigger front ayin, a bigger front dalet. Ayin and dalet together make the word aid, which means witness. When we say the Shema, we're giving testimony to the unity and oneness of God. Another interesting point that the Alter Rebbe one time, Rabbi Shnei Zalman Liadi one time pointed out, is that the Daled, it's a big Daled. The Daled, what does it look like? It looks like a hammer. Look at the letter Daled. It looks like a hammer, the handle and a top. So the big Daled, why is it a big Daled? It's like a hammer to bang it in your head again and again and again to understand that God is one. That's from the Alter Rebbe. And the mitzvahs of the paragraph of Shema contains many mitzvahs in a few 4, 5, 6 lines. It contains the mitzvah to love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. What does it mean, your might? It means your material your material means, and it also means even if God will take your life, you still have to love God. That teaches the mitzvah of giving up your life for God, which unfortunately throughout our history, I'm sure many of our ancestors have sanctified God's name in that way. Then it says you should have these words, that I'm going to tell you, be on your heart. You should teach them to your children. And from here we learn the mitzvah of chinuch. The mitzvah means to teach to your children. It's not just enough that you should learn Torah yourself, you should study Torah yourself, you have to also give it over to the next generation. And it doesn't only mean to your biological children, it means to your students, to anyone you can educate. And as the Rabbi used to teach, that if you know Aleph Beis, you have the responsibility to teach other people Aleph Beis. If you only know Aleph, you have the responsibility to teach other people Aleph. There's never a time where you can't be in the giving role. As long as you know something, you could pass that knowledge to someone who knows less than you. We're enjoined to teach the Torah when we are sleeping, when we're sitting in our houses, when we're going on the way, when we are sleeping, and when we wake up. And that's where we learn the mitzvah of saying the Shema in the evening and saying the Shema in the morning. Then it says you should tie them as a sign on your hands and as toitafos, which mean a sort of how does he translate here? A reminder between your eyes, which refers to the mitzvah of tefillin. Mitzvah of tefillin actually has one of the paragraphs in the tefillin. One of the paragraphs in the tefillin are the Shema, and they go on your arm and they go between your eyes. It doesn't literally mean between your eyes; it means over here, where the place where a baby's head is soft, which is saying this area. And then it says one last place that you should write this Shema is you should write it as a mezuzah on your doorposts and on your gates. And that's again in the mezuzah scroll is this paragraph of the Shema. So this is literally the quintessential Jewish prayer. This is like there's everything in there. There's the tefillin, there's the Shema, there's loving God, there's fulfilling the mitzvahs, there's knowing that God is one. You can't get more packed prayer and more packed sentences than these ones. And the end of the parasha is talking about remaining loyal to God. But even when we go to the land, we should remain loyal to God. Even when we get lots of stuff, we're going to have good. If you read the verses, you can read the houses are good things. They have all the good stuff. You should still remember that God is your God. And if you look at verse 18, it brings out the idea of going beyond the letter of the law. So you should know that there is the letter of the law you have to do. Usually the letter of the law, that's the minimum. You should always go beyond the letter of the law and not go for compromises. Go for doing what's right, even if it's not necessarily mandated to do. And the parasha continues with teaching it to our kids, and with the laws against intermarriage and eradicating idolatry. And Parsha finishes off. The last verse is that you observe on page. You observe the commandments, rules, and ordinances that I command you today to do them. Now, the commentators explain, what do you mean commanded today? Today to do them, meaning when we do them now, in this world we could do mitzvahs. In the next world, both after 120, in the spiritual next world, and also in the next world when the resurrection of the dead, when Mashiach comes, we're going to get the reward. We're not going to be doing mitzvahs anymore. We'll still do mitzvahs, but the mitzvahs are not going to be there in the same manner. It says in Hayom Yom, which is a book that I wrote, I think I mentioned it before, a book that I wrote with a short aphorism for every day, a short little 2-3 liner, 5 liner sometimes for every day of the calendar. We're going to be wishing back to the days when we could have done them. When Mashiach comes, we're going to say, oh, I wish I was back to the time when we were able to do mitzvahs. I heard from someone who grew up in Russia, actually, and he says when he came out of Russia and he was able to do mitzvahs freely, he sort of had a sort of longing back to the time when he was in Russia and he was able to do mitzvahs with the hard work. It was difficult to do mitzvah. It was overcoming a challenge with the mitzvah. Then when he came to the free land, the mitzvah is still a mitzvah, but it didn't have that same internal
feeling of accomplishment.
The same thing is true by Mashiach's times. Well, of course we're going to do mitzvahs then, but there's not going to be any big deal. We're always going to do the right thing. Right now in this world where there's other challenges to play at for, there's other things which are holding us back or pushing back, right now when we do a mitzvah, it's so much more meaningful. So right now in this world is the time to do mitzvahs, and the next world is the time to reap the reward. We'll still do mitzvahs then, but it won't have that same feeling.
Well, after Mashiach comes, why do we need to do mitzvahs?
It's a saying, if good is better, not better. Meaning, you can always go up in levels of good, but we will be constantly achieving greater and greater good, but it'll be in a different realm already. It won't be going from bad to good. It'll be going from good to good, right? It's a different...
Good to better.
Good to better, to better to better, yeah. And now for Margarita, we'll look at the Haftarah on page 1398. So this Haftarah, again, is a very, very famous Haftarah. It's called Haftarah of Nachamu. Nachamu means comfort, console. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. So again, as we spoke last week, 2 weeks ago, that this time of year we do Haftarahs that are connected to the time of year, not only to the Parsha. And this time of year is the destruction. This week is Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple. And the Haftarah this week is comfort, be comforted. After the crazy negative things of the temple, we start off with the comfort of the Jewish people. And it's from Yeshaya, from Isaiah. And if you read through it now or later, there's a lot of comforting and how God will come and redeem us, and He will shepherd us like His flock of His thing, and rebuild the temple. It's very comforting after all the negative things which happened on Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temples and all the negative things which happened in Jewish history. This is a purpose of comforting. It starts off with the Nachamu Nachamu. it's double comfort. It's one for the first Beit HaMikdash, one for the second Beit HaMikdash. That's the parsha in short. So the name of the parsha we said was Vaetchanan. I pleaded. Moshe pleaded to God about going to the land of Israel. Now, the mitzvah of prayer that we have every day is made of 3 parts. I mean, if you look at the Siddur, there's many parts to it, but the core essential mitzvah of prayer is to ask God for what we need every day. That could take between 2 and 20 seconds, yeah, or could take a few hours, right? There's no limit to it. Mitzvah is, if we need something, if there's something we're lacking, to ask God for it. Now, there's 2 more parts of prayer, which are praising God and thanking God. And if you look at the Midah, which the way it's structured, is his first 3 blessings are praising God. The next 12 blessings are asking God for our needs. If you ever read the Midah in English, you'll see that it literally covers the boxes of health, livelihood, your blessings for your kids, for the world as a whole, bringing Mashiach, etc., etc. That's all there. Protection from enemies, whatever it is all in those blessings. And the last 3 blessings, which is the 3rd part of prayer, is thanking God. Thanking God for everything He does for us in the past and what He was going to do for us in the future. So that's literally the build-up, a bake-up of what Jewish prayer is. Praising God, asking God for what we need, and thanking Him. But if you want to boil it down to one point, what is prayer? It's the middle one, the main one, which is asking God for what you need. That's what prayer is. Now, there's also deeper ideas of what prayer is, connection to God. It's all true. I'm not taking away from that. But the biblically mandated mitzvah is to ask God for what you need. That's the fundamental purpose and concept behind prayer. We often, when we do pray, either the words it says in the Amidah, the text, or prayer in the heart of our own words, we often ask for more than what we need. Right? We ask for what we would like. We ask for more than the needs, we ask for the wants. Right?
Yeah.
And God does give it to us sometimes. That's given to us more out of God's boundless generosity. It's more of as a free gift.
When you do a quick prayer, let's say before you eat, you just thank you're not asking God for anything. You're just thanking God. So where's the asking God for something coming?
The brachas before we eat are slightly different.
Yeah.
There it says that it's forbidden to have any enjoyment of the world without acknowledging God's ownership over it first. Mm. So let's say we make a blessing over bread. What do we say? Baruch atah, blessed are you, Hashem, King of the world, who brought grain out of the earth. Yeah. Or on fruit is Boirei Pri Eitz, created the fruit of the tree. Boirei Pri Adama, created the fruit of the earth. Or shakos, which is on everything, on fish, on eggs, on milk, on many for meat. That's shahakol niya b'varei, that everything was created by God's words. That's a very all-encompassing and means a lot. But it's the idea behind the blessings for eating or before different even for mitzvahs is acknowledging God's ownership over which is acknowledging. That's like asking permission, sort of asking permission. Now, we often ask God for more than what we need. We ask God for our wants. We ask God for extras. And God, many times, hopefully always, gives us what we asked for. And then why is God so generous? Because the Baal Shem Tov, one that put it, in God's eyes, every single Jew is like a child born to elderly parents, an only child born to elderly parents. If you've ever seen how that operates, an only child in general, an only child born to elderly parents who are waiting for the child for a long time, the doting and the giving that the parents and the way the parents relate with that child, that's the way God relates to every single Jew. Gives them everything, hopefully gives them everything they want. So that type of giving is called something chinam, which means free. Which means, what do I mean free? It means that you didn't do anything necessary to deserve that. That's just God wants to give you. Free. God is relates to us in a way that we above and beyond anything we deserve. That's why Moshe uses this less language of I pleaded to God. I asked him for this overwhelming gift. Now Moshe rightfully deserves to go into the land of Israel. Moshe rightfully deserves whatever he wants. He's been working with God for 40 years as the leader of the Jewish people, but he's been connected to God for a long time before that, and he's been doing the right thing. Moshe rightfully deserves plenty. But Moshe, as we learned in a different parsha, that Moshe was the most humble man that ever lived. What does it mean Moshe was the most humble man that ever lived? Do you think Moshe didn't know who he was? How important he was? What does it mean Moshe was the most humble man? It doesn't mean he didn't recognize how special he was. It means that he thought that I was given all these capabilities by God. I was given these opportunities by God. I was given these abilities and possibilities. So that's why I was able to accomplish what I could have. But if someone else was given all the things which I was given by God, they would have done a better job than me. That's what it means Moshe was the most humble person. Because he was at the peak of power, he was at the peak of spirituality, but he didn't take it as it's something I did and I deserve. He said, no, it's because God gave that to me. If God would have given it to someone else, they would have done a better job than me. And therefore the Moshe was more humble. So Moshe, even though he could rightfully demand, or tell God, 1 second, I've been working with you for 40 years, let me into the land of Israel. Moshe asked it in a way of pleading, asked it in a way of begging, something which is just above and beyond. You don't like this?
No, it doesn't fit in with what you said at the beginning. 515 times, it's not pleading, it's annoying.
Fair enough. But Moshe is saying, really, I could demand it and say, God, that's enough. Let me in. Moshe was asking in a way that's showing that out of his humility, out of his supplication, God, let me into the land. Now, there's a whole discussion about when are you praying for nothing. It says that until 40 days after the child's conceived, first 40 days you can pray for it to be a boy or a girl. Afterwards, you wait to take your time. Right? God, after the baby, I don't know how it works biologically, but this is the way it works in Torah. Until 40 days, it's called tefillat shav. It says the similar idea. If someone's coming to the city and sees a fire in a house, you can't pray to God, please let it up in my house, because it's already happened. Once something's happened, you can't pray for it. Before something happens, you can pray. So, when Moshe was decreed that he's not going to the land of Israel, it wasn't clear, is this the creed, or is this what God said, and it could still be changed. So, he's saying, even if it's been decreed, God, give me an extra free gift, give me an extra above and beyond, like we said, this idea of somebody's imposed needs, there's also for the wants. Give me something above and beyond, allow me to enter the land. That, in a way, the revelation which would have happened if Moshe would have gone into the land, what would have happened if Moshe would have gone into the land? Moshe would have built a Beit HaMikdash, it says. If Moshe went into the land, he would have built the temple. That temple would never have been destroyed. Anything Moshe built didn't get destroyed. It says that Moshe's menorah that Moshe built and Moshe's Aron, the box where the two tablets were kept, they were never destroyed. They're buried somewhere deep under the ground on the Temple Mount. These things existed for all of time. Something that Moshe builds can't get destroyed. So if Moshe would build the temple, God would never destroy the temple. But unfortunately, he would take out, if he had anything to take out, he would take it out on us, not on the temple. It says that when God destroyed the temples, which is this week's event, Tisha B'Av, instead of destroying the people, even though he hit us pretty badly, but instead of destroying the people, he took out his anger on stones, wood, destroy the temple. So, in a way, Moshe not entering the land, not building the temple, is better for the Jews on the Jews' sake. Again,
Did Moses know this before? Would he have been aware that that's what he was doing?
if we want to go back into that discussion we started off with, the Moshe agreed to stay in the desert in the end. I would assume that he wanted to stay with his generation. It's part of that same thing is not going into the land and cause the Jewish people to be destroyed. But the main point here is that it boils back down to what was spoken this week, today, and many other times, that Moshe would be a greater revelation. Moshe would build a temple, would be a greater revelation, but we wouldn't be able to handle it. It wouldn't be in our world. It wouldn't be in our interface. It wouldn't fit with us. If Moshe doesn't build a temple, Moshe doesn't go to the land, Moshe stays in the desert, doesn't get this free gift from God, doesn't get this revelation, then we could work on our terms. We could build a temple through King David, King Shlomo. We could, and if the temple needs to be destroyed, it will be destroyed because of our sins, and it will be rebuilt again. But the point is, it's all something which we can handle, we can manage in our world. Moshe, if it's just Moshe, then it will just be a top-down experience. It won't be working bottom-up. I was reading last night a letter of the Rebbe to a rabbi called Yitzchak Gansberg. He was a rabbi in Israel in the 1950s and the 60s. He started one of the first Chabad houses, so to speak, in Israel. And one of the points in the letter is that he had written to the Rebbe that he doesn't have clear directives what to do. So Rebbe says, what do you mean you don't have clear directives? I've written, the Hebrew word is hamoin, which means tons of letters with and instructions of what to do, how to spread Judaism, how to build up the institutions. Yes, I didn't say that so-and-so should go to there, and so-and-so should go to there, and so-and-so should do this. I didn't give you exactly who should do it, because I don't want it to work that way. It doesn't work top down. You need to get together between you guys, whoever's working, and say, you have the strengths to this, you go to that. You have the strength to that, you do this. Each person needs to take his part. So although I've given you the general direction and the mission and the goal, but the details you have to figure out yourself. And that comes back to the same thing here. If Moshe would build a temple, if Moshe would come into the land and set up the Jewish people, it would be very much a top-down revelation. Just like if God spoke to us directly at Sinai. It would be from above to below. There wouldn't be enough of our own work. The general theme, I would say, of this parsha is that the Jewish people, yes, we get the revelations. Yes, we get direction from God. Yes, God does speak to us, sometimes directly, sometimes through Moshe. But the main point of our living is to work on it ourselves, to take that big dollar, that big hammer, and smash it into our own heads, to get ourselves working, to get ourselves invested and involved in our role in life, in our mission in the world. We should build a temple. We should make the world a place fitting for godliness to dwell.
I don't like it.
You don't like it? Okay. You win some, you lose some.
I'll tell you why. You know how when we talk about these 6 cities of refuge, and the reason why we have 3 for 2.5 tribes, and then 3 is the same for 9.5 tribes, because land is holy and land protects people in a way. Same way, when temple was standing, it was also in a way protecting people.
Sure.
The problem, people weren't exactly righteous, and temple didn't exactly protect us all the way, because of the way it was built. King David wasn't righteous, not really.
They have a vendetta against King David. One day we'll have to.
But he was not a perfect man, neither was King Shlomo. So just back to your point, if Moses did enter the land, and he did build a temple, so if temple was built by Moses, the man that he was, it probably would have protected us forever.
I hear what you're
Just saying, I mean, they talk about his flaws and why he couldn't go to it.
Yeah, but he was probably as close to perfect as you can get.
But
wasn't the people sinning was more the issue rather than the fact that there was King David? I know they weren't perfect like Moshe was, but there was a issue with the people not.
People look up to the.
If God wanted perfect people, He wouldn't create people. We have angels. We have angels, right? The fact that God created people and created us in this world and created us with our vices, with our issues, is because He wants us to work through them. He wants us to stumble, pick up a bit, work again, and that's the purpose. We're a little bit like putting on a show for God. for regular people. What's more entertaining? A parrot that speaks, a bird that speaks, gives you. The kings back in the day used to all have these talking birds. It's a novelty. It's something which is innovative. It shows you, that gives you enjoyment, and that's what, in a way, us humans, lowly humans in this world, in this physical world, struggling to integrate and to live our spiritual lives into our physical lives. We're giving God enjoyment from the very struggle. We're giving God enjoyment, and the role to bring godliness down into this physical world, that specifically has to come from us working, from our part. If it all came from top down, from revelation, from godliness, then God didn't need to start in this world. He could have created. He didn't have to create a physical world. If He created the physical world, then we need to use out the physical world. There were people who were against, let's say, when the Rebbe started speaking on the radio. The Rebbe's Forbidden started being broadcast on the radio and then later on television. And they'd say the radio is, what goes on the radio is terrible things. What goes on television is terrible things. The Rebbe said, no, why is there radio in this world? Because it exists in the world. We have to now use it for the right thing. We have to now use the physical innovations, use the physical things going on in the world, use the technology, and use it for the right purpose.
Talking about temple now. So if you think about it, whatever was created later on, it was becoming like a cult.
A deity.
When people remember the snake, yes. So at the end of the day, the people who would come there look at the snake and forget why they came there. They thought the healing coming from snake, so that were destroyed. So the problem, it's not that the building would be indestructible. It's people would see building at the end of it. Whereas building is just a place
It's a nice
where
idea.
you can do sacrifice and worship God and do other things, So if you think about it this way, you can see why you don't want it to have deity kind of indestructible. It needs to be real thing.
In that same book, there's a really beautiful line. It works better in Yiddish, but I'll translate it in English. The line in Yiddish goes, Hecher is as we nehmt it by the hand. Teire is as we get allein. It says, higher is it when you're taken by the hand. More precious is when we work hard ourselves. It's much higher with a greater relation when everything's taking us. When God's taking us and Moshe's taking us, it's more. It's definitely higher. What's more precious is when we work hard.
So the old give the man a fish or go fish yourself.
Yeah.
Much more.
Yeah. I hope we had some enlightenment to the Pasha. You take Allah's team,
Olive.
I'm more on Allah's team.